Good morning, or depending on when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross from PTCG Radio, and we are back with the first round from another tournament. This was a league challenge recorded at the wonderful Chimera Games in Nottingham in the UK, and it was the very first weekend that Lysandre's trump card has been banned. This is the supporter card which made both players shuffle their discard piles back into their decks and led to some truly horrific combos where you could just run through your deck every turn and then trump card everything back in. So there was a league challenge held at Nottingham the first weekend this was banned, so I went along to it and I recorded some games. Here is round one, and we see two Worlds competitors here from this year. Both have their invite well and truly sewn up. We have Ryan Moorehouse playing Night March, and we have Luke Kirkham playing Rayquaza. So sit here, enjoy the video, make sure you like, subscribe, comment and all that good stuff, and come back for round two shortly. Just one very quick note before we get going. For the first of the games here, I won't tell you how many games it goes to, but for the first game there is a tiny little bit. There are a few situations where the video freezes just a little bit, and there's a place where I had to make a cut. The video works fine, the commentary is all good, and it does disappear about halfway through the video, so don't worry about that, just sit back and enjoy. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we have Ryan Moorehouse on the left, he is playing Night March, and we have Luke Kirkham on the right, he is playing Rayquaza. And I mentioned in the intro how Lysandre's trump card has been banned, and that is going to help both these decks here. Now, as a quick rundown, Ryan is playing Night March. That's a deck where you attack with a number of attackers, all of whom usually attack Night March. So it does 20 damage times the amount of Pokemon in the discard pile with the Night March attack. Nice and simple. Ryan wants to get a bunch of Night Marches in the discard pile, and then he wants to make sure that he has got a attacker active doing Night March. Now, not a great start for either of them. Luke doesn't want to start with Virizion. Ryan definitely doesn't want to start with his Shaman. Shaman, of course, has the ability Setup, which allows you to draw cards until you've got 6 in your hand. And having it in the active not only means, it's a bad starter you don't want in the active position, but it also means that you're not then able to use that Setup ability. Now, Ryan's got a few options here. He seems to have an N and a Sycamore in his hand. He has got a computer search in his hand as well. Now, he's played the Trainer's Mail, which allows him to look at the top 4 cards of his deck, choose a trainer card and put it into his hand. And he's got a choice there between, I think, Battle Compressor, Lysandre, and VS Seeker. Now, Battle Compressor would seem to be a good one here, but he has gone for the VS Seeker instead. He is going to play a Battle Compressor, though he has got one in his hand, and he's going to just want to get some Night Marches here. Now, the obvious candidates to get rid of straight away are the Lampent. Lampent are a stage 1 that have the Night March ability, and these Night March decks, they don't tend to play Litwick, they just play 4 Lampent, and the Lampent are purely discard fodder. They're not bad starters because they're stage 1s, you can't start with them, so you just want to dump them in your discard pile as soon as you can, and just add a bit of damage there with the Night March. I am not entirely sure why he went for the VS Seeker off the Trainer's Mail, but Ryan is an exceptional player, so hopefully in a minute we'll see what's going on with that. And as predicted, he has gone straight for the free Lampent with the Battle Compressor, as we kind of figured he would. When he plays his second Battle Compressor, you would imagine that the 4th Lampent is going to be one of the first things to go for. Now, going for the VS Seeker, oh no, he's got the 4th Lampent in his hand. So there's already 4 Night Marches in the discard pile. The Night March is doing 80 damage here, and this means that he's going for the N as well here. Now, of course, one advantage that he does have with these VS Seekers is that he's able to basically dump cards and then VS Seeker them back. So one of the reasons it looks like Ryan went for the VS Seeker is basically to work out the math. Now, you saw him at the beginning of the turn. He was counting out his cards, trying to see what options were available to him as he went through his turn. So it might be that he basically needed to discard his whole hand or play down his whole hand. So he's got the option here of taking the VS Seeker off the Trainer's Mail and then using Computer Search to discard a bunch of stuff before using VS Seeker to play his supporter for the turn. Or maybe he took VS Seeker because he needed to discard a card, and the VS Seeker was less used to him at this particular moment than something like a Battle Compressor would be. Now, there do seem to be a couple little pauses here and there with the video. We'll see if that carries on. Hopefully it's not going to be a huge problem here. Maybe it's just the computer being a pain. So the Pumpkaboo goes down, and he's just Sycamore the VS Seeker. That's interesting. So he has got the Dimension Valley down, he's benched a Pumpkaboo, which is one of those Night March attackers, and he has chosen to just Sycamore the VS Seeker. Now, one reason for that might be that he's not really going to need the VS Seeker this game. It's not VS Seeker, it adds consistency and Joltik goes down, he's another Night March attacker. VS Seeker adds consistency, and there goes the second Battle Compressor here. It adds consistency by allowing you to reuse supporters, but as you'll see, and I did have the pleasure of playing Ryan in this tournament in one of the later rounds, not on stream unfortunately. And what it allows you to do is basically reuse supporters. But Ryan goes through his deck so fast, that's not necessarily needed. The other thing you use it for is reusing Lysandre's trump card, but Ryan isn't really going to be using Lysandre. He's not going to be using it very often because he's not going to be needing to pull up too many EX attackers. Luke is going to be attacking with his Rayquaza EX, so Ryan's not really going to need to use many Lysandres to actually pull EXs up like you would against other matchups. It's going to be a mostly hit what's in front of you kind of deck. So he gets rid of 2 Pumpkaboos and 1 Joltik. One of the things Ryan does need to watch here is to make sure that he doesn't get rid of too many Night March attackers, because he needs to be relying on having a Night March attacker to use. If you get rid of all your Night March attackers, you can no longer attack. So he puts an energy on that Shaman, and he's just going to retreat it. It's his first turn of the game, so he can't attack. So he's got to put either a Joltik or a Pumpkaboo active. He puts a Pumpkaboo active, and that's the best choice. The Joltik's got 30 HP, the Pumpkaboo's got 60 HP. Neither of them are particularly good. They're not particularly durable. They ain't going to last very long. But whereas the Pumpkaboo attacks for free colourless energy, that means you need a Dimension Valley out and a DCE. The Joltik attacks just for a DCE. So if Luke plays a Stadium, and I believe he does play 4 Skyfield in his list. If Luke plays a Stadium and then knocks out the Joltik, Ryan will need the Stadium DCE to attack with the Pumpkaboo. Whereas if Luke just knocks out the Pumpkaboo and the Stadium, Ryan then only needs a DCE for the Joltik. So it's easier for him next turn to get the Joltik going than the Pumpkaboo. Now, it looks like there are 7 Night Marches there, and one thing Ryan does brilliantly is he keeps a dice there to record how many Night Marches are in the discard pile to save going through it again and again, which will help us greatly on this commentary. So the Night Marches next turn are already doing 140 damage. Now, Luke is playing this Rayquaza deck. Rayquaza EX has a load of good things going for him. It's actually Mega Rayquaza. There's a Spirit Link, which means that you don't end your turn when you Mega Evolve. It's got Delta Evolution, which means you can evolve on the first turn of the game, and there goes a Skyfield to get rid of the Dimension Valley. That means that each player can now have 8 bench Pokemon. And he plays a Shaman to draw 3. He has had to dump a DCE though, and that could be damaging late game when he's trying to reuse attackers. Having said that, if he loses 3 Rayquazas, he loses the game. So, 1 DCE per Rayquaza. So he only needs 3 of them. And a Jirachi goes down there. And now he's going to be searching for a supporter. And he gets the N. And he plays it straight away. Now, Ryan is going to need Lysandre at some point in this game, especially next turn. As it stands, he's doing 140 damage. Now, he's only going to need 2 more Night Marches to do 180 and knock out the active Virizion EX. But if he doesn't have any more Night Marches in the discard pile next turn, he can use Lysandre to KO the Shaman or the Jirachi on the bench with the Night Marches he's already got in the discard pile. Luke is going to need a lot here. He's going to need a Rayquaza, a Mega Rayquaza, and a Spirit Link to evolve up. He's then going to need a DCE. He's going to need a Basic Energy in the discard pile. And then he needs to play the trainer card Mega Turbo, which will allow him to attach a Basic Energy from his discard pile to his Mega Rayquaza. And Rayquaza's attack, remember, does 30 damage times the amount of Pokemon you've got on your bench for free colourless energy. So, Luke here, he gets a trainer's mail, and he got a computer search, which is quite handy. Hopefully he's going to get the part he needs to start setting up. What he really wanted turn 1 was something like a Winona would have been really good, allowing him to search for free colourless Pokemon. But of course, one of the things he would search for is a Shaman to allow you to draw a bunch of cards, and if you're in a position where you've got a full hand, Shaman allows you to draw up until you've got 6 cards in your hand. If you've already got a bunch of cards in your hand, Shaman ends up doing very, very little, which is why he probably went for the N. Now, the other thing which could play a part in this particular matchup, and another thing for which Winona would be very useful, is the fact that Luke's weak to lightning. All of his Rayquazas are weak to lightning. Now Luke, like a lot of these Rayquaza decks, plays a 1-1 Altaria, or at least a 1-1 Altaria line. Altaria, you've got the Swablu, which allows you to evolve straight away with its Delta Evolution ancient trait. And so you can basically just put your Swablu down, immediately evolve it to Altaria, even on the same turn, and then it removes weakness from all your colourless Pokemon, which does a huge amount of good. We did have a slight video blip there. I've cut out most of the blip, but for some reason it's not playing brilliantly today. I am using a different camera, so we learn as we go, but it's a nice clear picture. You can make out all the cards, and I'm talking you right through it, so all quite good. But yes, there are a couple little video blips here and there, nothing to get too concerned about. So Ryan gets his 3rd Battle Compressor down there, and Luke has not had a very good start at all. One of the downsides with this Rayquaza deck is when it comes against non-EX decks, Rayquaza EX's initial attack does 10 damage for 1 energy, or 100 damage for 3. So he really needs to be evolving with the attacking with the Rayquaza EX. He hasn't got a little attacker that can just do 60 damage to knock out a Pumpkaboo on the first turn of the game, which is interesting. But it's one of the things of Luke's deck. Really good against EX decks, and it's good against non-EX decks. You know, I was playing Donphan at this tournament. I wouldn't want to play the Rayquaza deck, but it can struggle sometimes to get knockouts on little Pokemon because you still need to get the Mega EX out with free energy on. So he plays the Battle Compressor, and he gets rid of, I think, another Pumpkaboo, another Joltik, which now puts him at 9 Night Marchers, doing 180 damage. 2 more till he can get the KO on the Mega Rayquaza EX. And you see that he also got rid of a Lysandre with the Battle Compressor. And what that means is that he's now got one in the discard pile. So instead of drawing into a Lysandre, he now just needs to draw into a VS Seeker. And there's going to be more of them in his deck. And that's going to allow him to actually be able to, you know, pull something up from the bench. And there are some juicy things on the bench. Now, weirdly here, because Luke couldn't get the KO last turn, and as I said, on Ryan's first turn, he was absolutely right to leave the Pumpkaboo active. But because Luke didn't get the KO, that's left Ryan in an awkward position where he'd really want the Joltik active. Now, he's in a weird position. He's got a DCE in his hand, but does he put it on the Pumpkaboo and hope he draws a Dimension Valley, which is what he's going for? Or does he put it on the Joltik and hope to draw into a Switch card? And there is a Trainer's Mail, so he's going to be desperately searching here for the Dimension Valley, and it doesn't look like he's got it. There's a Battle Compressor, a Lysandre, a Trainer's Mail, and I couldn't see what the other card was there. So he goes for a Battle Compressor, and you see an Empoleon there. Now, he's just playing one Empoleon, no Piplup, no Prinplup. And what this actually allows him to do, he plays one Archie's Ace in the hole. And this is a supporter where you can only play it if it's the only card in your hand, but it allows you to put a water Pokemon on your bench as if it was a basic, and then draw until you've got 5 cards in your hand. It's a really fun card to use. So there goes a VS Seeker. And he's going to be dragging himself an N, and of course he hasn't actually played a supporter yet. So he's going to end both players to 6, both players will shuffle their decks in and their hands into their deck and draw 6 cards, and the question is going to be whether he can actually draw the Dimension Valley off the N. Dimension Valley being a stadium that reduces the attack cost for Psychic Pokemon by 1. Now, the other thing he's got there, he's got a Mew EX on the bench. Mew EX can basically copy any attack of any Pokemon on the field as long as it's got the requisite energy. and he's missed the Dimension Valley there. And that means that if he's got a Dimension Valley out, Mew EX can actually do Night March with a Joltik on the bench for a single energy of any colour. Now, that's interesting. The other interesting thing, of course, is that by using Mew EX, he can actually put more Night Marches in a discard pile, and as long as there is one Night Marcher on his bench, he can use Mew to copy Night March. It also does give up 2 prizes. Now, against EX decks, that's not something you'd want to do. You wouldn't want to do that against a Donphan deck, for instance, but you certainly wouldn't have any problem giving up 2 prizes against a Rayquaza EX deck, because you're one-hit KOing for a double colourless energy, and they're one-hit KOing with a Mega EX that needs a Spirit Link for free energy. So, it's in your favour. So Luke plays a Battle Compressor of his own. He's ditching an Execute. Execute just allows you to... It's got an ability Propagate, which means you can take it from the discard pile and put it into your hand. And that's going to help if he wants to play an Ultra Ball or something like that in the future. It means you've got to discard 1 card. He gets rid of a Colress so that he can VS Seeker for it later. And he dumps a Mr. Mime because Mr. Mime blocks bench damage and Ryan's deck doesn't hit the bench. And we see the first Mega Turbo coming down from Luke, so he's attaching a basic grass energy from his discard pile to that Rayquaza, which is nice and handy. So, the question here is, has Luke got a DCE? And he's going to need a switch as well. So he plays the Trainer's Mail, and I can't see his hand very well. He's got the switch, but he doesn't yet have the DCE. It's a beautiful secret rare switch, I should add, but he still doesn't have the DCE yet. And he's gonna need a DCE in order to attack. And there is the switch, so you've got to imagine that he's got the DCE, because you wouldn't want to leave it active. Oh, he's got a VS Seeker, and he's going for the Colress for 8. A risky move here, especially without the Altaria out. Now, the Pumpkaboo would only be doing 180 damage at this stage, but if he were to be able to get the Joltik in the active with a DCE attached, he would then be doing 360 damage, which would be more than enough to KO that Mega Rayquaza EX. So, a risky strategy here, which might pay off if he could hit the DCE. He had to play the switch then, because if he doesn't play the switch, then he ends up in a position where he plays the Colress 2-8 and he draws the DCE, but he doesn't draw the switch. So a bit of a gamble here, but one he basically had to do, because that Pumpkaboo was 1 energy or a Dimension Valley, and you can see Ryan's got the energy in his hand, away from getting a 1-hit KO on the Virizion. Pumpkaboo's doing 180, Virizian's only got 170 HP. So that Pumpkaboo would have got the KO on the Virizion straight away. And that would have been, shall we say, disconcerting. Now, the good news for Luke is he's got the Swablu down. He plays an Ultra Ball and he only has to discard a Xerosic because he's able to propagate the Execute to pay the other discarding. Ultra Ball making you discard 2 cards to search for any Pokemon. And he gets the Altaria, uses the ancient trait Delta Evolution to evolve it immediately, gets the DCE, and now Luke is rolling. A turn later than he wanted, but he's rolling. He's now got the Mega EX, he's got the requisite energy, and crucially he's gotten rid of the weakness. However, Ryan now has 10 Night Marches in his discard pile. This means that he's doing 200 damage, so a Muscle Band or 1 more Night Marcher in the discard pile, and Ryan is getting the 1-hit KO here for just a double colourless energy. And we can see he's got the double colourless energy in his hand. He's also got a Joltik, but he does need to be careful of getting rid of too many Pokemon too quickly. Now, we do see a Dimension Valley in Ryan's hand, so it would be good if he's going to attack with a Mew, and it looks like he is. He'd be better off here using Dimension Valley and attaching 1 energy as he plays a Jirachi to get a Sycamore. He'd be better off using Dimension Valley and a single basic energy, and he's got 1 in his hand, than trying to use a DCE here, because then late game he's going to need those DCEs more to attack with a Joltik, etc., than he needs them this turn to attack with the Mew. So, he's got a second Joltik down, and the question is he going to go Dimension Valley Water Energy, or is he going to go DCE? Whatever happens, he's not quite getting the KO yet. So he is going for the DCE. I thought I saw a Dimension Valley in his hand. I could have been wrong. But then again, of course, there is another consideration here. He's got a bench of 5 if he plays Dimension Valley, and a bench of 6 if he leaves the Sky. Oh no. So he's put down a Mime, and then he's played the Dimension Valley, and he's chosen to get rid of his Jirachi. And I like that play, because it basically means that he's played the Jirachi, but it's now not sitting on his bench waiting to be Lysandre up and KO'd. So that's a good little play. And there is the Muscle Band. Mega Rayquaza EX only has 220 HP. only. And Mew now with 10 Night March in a discard pile is doing 200 damage. With the Muscle Band goes up to 220. And we have the one-hit KO on the Mega Rayquaza EX. And things are suddenly looking very bad for Luke indeed. Is that not a KO? I'm sure that's a KO. I'm sure he had 10 Night March in the discard pile. You then add, which is 200 because it's 20 times. You then add the Muscle Band, it's 220, and that's the HP that Mega Rayquaza's got. So he does get KO'd. And now here's an issue for Luke. Luke has had to fill his bench with Shaymins, Jirachis, etc. to get going. He's had to put the Altaria down in order to get rid of the weakness, and now he's in a position where he doesn't have a Rayquaza out. So in order to get attacking this turn, he's going to need a Rayquaza EX, he's going to need a Spirit Link, he's going to need a Mega Rayquaza EX, and he's going to need a DCE, and he's going to need a Mega Turbo just to get the KO. So he's putting the Virizion up as a bit of a stopgap, but he's going... Oh, and he's going to need a switch, because nothing on his bench has free retreat, so he's going to need to get it out into the active somehow. So things have turned against Luke very, very quickly here. Now, he does get the Skyfield out, which is an advantage, but he's going to need to do something here. Now, we see there he's got a... He's played a VS Seeker. Presumably he's getting a Colrus, and with 5 Pokemon on Ryan's bench and what looks like 4 on Luke's, that's going to give him a Colrus to 9. So there are options here. He's already got 2 Shaymin on his bench. It comes down, I suppose, to how many Shaymin he plays here. But I suppose we shall see. It's going to be interesting to see if he can actually pull off the combo. Ryan now is essentially set up. Now, he is 2 DCs down. He had 1 on the Pumpkaboo that got KO'd. He's got 1 on the Mew. And we do see a Rayquaza going down from Luke. And it looks like there's a Spirit Link on him as well. And there is the DCE. He still needs to switch Mega Rayquaza and Mega Turbo. So there goes the Ultra Ball. He's going to dump a Lysandre and a Grass Energy. That's going to get him the Mega Rayquaza. So a Mega Turbo and a Switch will get the KO here. And that's going to start putting some pressure onto Ryan. Because Ryan, in order to actually get the KO, is going to need a DCE for the Joltik and another Night Marcher or Muscle Band in the discard. Night Marcher discard pile or a Muscle Band. Oh, but Luke's actually missed the KO, and this is huge here. Ryan is now going to get a free KO. Well, it would have been a free KO on the Virizion, but he uses VS Seeker to get the Lysandre, and Luke just scoops because he knows there's no way he's coming back from that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of Night March. It's a deck which allows you to just essentially go for it and start getting these early KOs very, very quickly and very, very powerfully. And once it's set up, all you really need is just to draw into enough energy and make sure you can keep attackers on the field. Lysandre's trump card really hurt it by making you put all your Night Marchers back into your deck, but now Lysandre's trump card is gone, it really doesn't seem like it's a huge deal. So I'm going to pause this now for a second. I'm going to restart my computer, see if we can get this running just a little bit faster, and yeah, I will see you in just a moment. So going into game 2, I have just restarted my computer, so hopefully those little dodgy, the occasional blips in the video should be gone. So Ryan here is 1 game up on Luke. Ryan on the left playing Night March, Luke on the right playing Rayquaza. And we saw in the first game that everything basically went Ryan's way, pretty much entirely. He got his Night Marches out straight away. He was doing, I think he was doing something like, I think it was on turn 2, he did 220. It certainly, he moves on turn 3, he certainly had a lot going very, very quickly. And that's the thing with Night March. Lysandre's trump card was such a... it was such a good counter to it, because you play Lysandre's trump card and all the Pokemon go back in a discard pile and you have to start again. Now, if Ryan gets those Pokemon in his discard pile, there's nothing Luke can do to stop them staying in his discard pile. So they're in a weird position whereby all Ryan needs is just to make sure he's got Night Marchers on the bench and energy with which to attack. Now, that does mean a steady stream of DCEs, but remember his Mew plus Dimension Valley and Energy can make short work of that. Now here's an interesting thing from both players. Luke has started with his secret rare Execute, which is not ideal, but it's not the end of the world. Luke doesn't have many 1-prize attackers. Now we keep talking about trying to get into a 7-prize game. It basically means that you go down 5 prizes and then make your opponent KO an EX to win the game, hence they've actually taken 7 prizes. So you need to lose a non-EX at some point, so having Ryan knock out an Execute could be irrelevant here. Although, if Luke gets an Altaria out, maybe Ryan will Lysandre and kill the Altaria, and that will actually, lead to a 6-prize game. But what I'm saying is the Execute might not be the end of the world. So Luke plays a Battle Compressor turn 1, he gets rid of Grass Energy straight away, because that means he's going to be able to use... It needs to be in the discard pile for Luke to use Mega Turbo to attach to his Mega Rayquaza. He also gets rid of a Xerosic there, so that he can use a VS Seeker to get that Xerosic back at some point in the future. So both players really using Battle Compressor to make the most of it. Now he goes for a computer search right away. He's got a Skyfield in hand. So what I would imagine him doing here is using a... And you see he's only discarding 1 card there because he's got the Execute in the discard pile. So he would propagate the Execute and then discard it straight away. So one would presume he's going for a Winona here, unless he's already got one in his hand. Winona being a supporter which allows him to search for 3 colourless Pokemon, and he'd go for and there is the Winona, which I assume is what he got from the computer search. And one would imagine he would go here for a Rayquaza, a Mega Rayquaza, and a Shaman, or a Swablu Altaria Shaman, or... Yeah, it depends on what he's got in his hand. He really wants a Rayquaza, a Mega Rayquaza, a Swablu, an Altaria, and a Shaman. That would be the ideal here. So we go for the Swablu there, and we've got the Rayquaza, and there is the Altaria, so we really need a Shaman and the Mega here. And there is the Shaman going for free. Interesting that he chose to get rid of the Spirit Link with his computer search, but again, he might just have had other cards in his hand that he couldn't afford to get rid of, because that Spirit Link would have been another card. He could have attached that to the benched Rayquaza EX, and then that would have been 1 less card in his hand, and hence 1 more card to draw with Shaman. Remember that Luke is going first in can't attack here, so it's not particularly important here that he gets the Mega Rayquaza out with the Spirit Link. He's going to end his turn without attacking anyway, so as long as it's the very last thing he does in his turn, there's no problem with him just sticking down a Mega Rayquaza and then ending his turn without the Spirit Link. It makes no real difference. So he's gone for a second Rayquaza, and he doesn't even need the Mega Rayquaza this turn. All he needs, and there is the Mega Rayquaza, and he passes. Now, interestingly there, 2 things. Firstly, he got a second Rayquaza EX on the bench, which we saw was a problem in the previous game. But secondly, there is no energy on the field. Now, it's not the end of the world. He only needs 3 energy to attack. So he can just go DCE and Mega Turbo, and then he'll be absolutely fine. But he's still got to have those 2 cards. So we see a Trainer's Mail from Ryan. This is a really powerful card that you are going to see over and over again in the coming formats. It's a very aggressive trainer card, because with most decks playing 30 to 40 trainers, remember trainer includes stadiums, items, tools and supporters, all of which can be grabbed with Trainer's Mail except for Trainer's Mail, it really does allow you to really search for what you want. So there goes the Muscle Band there goes the computer search. Now, it's going to be interesting to see whether he's desperate to get the KO on the Execute. If he is, he could go for a DCE here, or presumably he's going to go for a supporter. Now, he's gone for the Battle Compressor, but you'll see he's got a VS Seeker in his hand. So again, here, we would imagine that he'd get rid of... well, actually here, now he's going to be able to empty his hand. So if he can empty his hand, he goes Archie's Ace in the hole, one Lampent, because as we've said, Lampent does nothing for him, and the Empoleon. Now, usually in this situation, he would go for a Sycamore. That would be what he would usually go for. But because he can completely empty his hand by putting in Dimension Valley and the Pumpkaboo, he then uses VS Seeker for the Archie's Ace in the hole. He gets the Empoleon on his bench as if it were a basic Pokemon, and gets to draw 5 cards. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that Empoleon has got that diving draw ability, which not only allows him to draw 2 cards, but allows him to discard something while he's at it. And you see there, he's discarded the Lampent, and he gets a second Battle Compressor. So here he really wants to go for the other 2 Lampent if they're in there. Maybe he'll go for an Execute. If he plays Execute... can't remember if he plays Execute or not. If he plays Execute, that would be a decent one to go for, because then you essentially don't have to discard anything to use Empoleon's driving draw ability. Or he could go for another supporter here, and there go the 2 Lampent we expected. And going for another supporter does mean he would be able to VS Seeker for it. The more different supporters you've got in your discard pile, the more options you have when you play a VS Seeker. But no, he doesn't. If he plays Execute, he's decided he doesn't need it yet, and there aren't any other supporters he's desperate to VS Seeker for. He is just filling the discard pile with his Pokemon here. So he's already got what looks like 5 Night Marchers out, so he's doing 100 damage. Now, if he doesn't get the DCE to get the KO here, he's going to want to switch. So there goes the Trainer's Mail, and he's got Lysandre. There is a DCE there, but he can't get it. He's going to have to switch out from the Mew, because that Mew's giving up 2 prizes, so he can't afford to leave it in the active to be KO'd next turn. And there is a Dimension Valley he's gone for, which is good, because if Luke gets a Skyfield next turn to counter Ryan's Dimension Valley, then Ryan can just Dimension Valley anyway. And I said double colourless energy. If he gets a Joltik on the bench, he only needs a single energy. Remember, with only Pumpkaboo out, he can only copy Pumpkaboo's ability. Now, he did have a Revive in his hand at some point, did he not? Or maybe he could have got it from the Trainer's Mail. So one thing he could have done there is use, and this would have required a lot more forethinking, but he could potentially... Now, I'm not sure that that was a valid attack. No, he has... No, he hasn't, sorry. He has copied Shaman's Sky Return. That took me a minute there to figure out what was going on. I do apologise. What he did there was, instead of using Night March, he used Shaman's Sky Return, which does 30 damage and puts the Pokemon and all cards attached to it in your hand. So Ryan's Mew copied Luke's Shaman, did Sky Return for 30 and KO'd the Execute. Now, what I was thinking Ryan could have done, and clearly he didn't need to, but he could have Battle Compressored earlier, getting a Joltik in the discard pile. He then could have got a Revive off the Trainer's Mail. He could have revived the Joltik on the bench, and then he would have been able to use Night March to get the KO on the Execute. Now, obviously, that's a lot more convoluted than just the play he did with a Shaman. It's harder for me to see because Luke's arm is directly over the Shaman. But it is still, I like to point out plays that people could have made. It wasn't the optimal play in that situation, but there are other situations where it might have been. So Luke now, he's got the Spirit Link. He's got the Mega Rayquaza. He's got 2 Mega Rayquazas, of course, now, because he evolved one at the end of the last turn. And actually now he can Ultra Ball. Now he's got 2 Executes in the discard pile. Ultra Ball forces you to discard 2 cards to search for any Pokemon. But of course, with 2 Execute in the discard pile, you can use a Propagation ability for each of them, propagate 2 Executes into your hand, and then discard those 2 with the Ultra Ball. So it's as if you're not discarding anything with the Ultra Ball. The other use for Execute, of course, and there is the Mega Turbo to get the energy, so he just needs a DCE for the KO here. The attack does 30 times the number of bench Pokemon, but Pumpkaboo's got 60 HP. So 3 bench Pokemon, more than enough, as Luke drops a Shaman for 4. And there is the DCE, so that's good. Luke's getting the KO here. But remember, Luke is KOing non-EXs, and Ryan is going to be trying to KO EXs. So not out of the woods yet, shall we say. But he's getting the attack off, and he's got... So now, even if the Rayquaza gets KO'd, he's still going to need to... He's only going to need a DCE and a Mega Turbo to get going. So there goes the Skyfield in terms of Dimension Valley. And we knew that was going to happen because we knew Ryan had it in his hand. Now he's got an Energy and a Muscle Band. Now he's going to need a Joltik. And there goes the Megaphone. It doesn't really do anything. It gets rid of the Spirit Link, which he didn't need anyway because the Spirit Link's done his job. And there goes a Sycamore. So Ryan is going to need a Joltik on his bench here. Oh, there is a Joltik. Pumpkaboo would not have done because Pumpkaboo's attack has a free energy cost. With the Dimension Valley comes down to 2 energy and Mew's only got 1 on. But that's not an issue. What is an issue is that Ryan only has 6 Pokemon in the discard pile with Night March. Now that's still 120 for a single energy and that's fine. But Mega Rayquaza has got, and there is a diving draw we see. Rayquaza has got 220 HP. And will KO that Mew next turn. Again, 4 bench Pokemon equals 120 damage, so Luke will literally just be able to get the KO on the Mew while attaching energy to start setting up the second Rayquaza. And we see a revive here for a Pumpkaboo. He's essentially, and I know that takes a Night Marcher out of the discard pile, but what it does is it essentially gives him more options for attackers next turn. And so, you know, it gives him something to promote if the Mew's KO'd, etc. So, because... Oh, he's using Sky Return. Now, I can see the benefit of doing that. Luke was going to KO the Mew and he was going to be 3 prizes to 1 up. But the problem is here, Ryan... He's basically bought himself a turn. It depends how Ryan's next turn goes. That Rayquaza, and it was for 50 because of the Muscle Band, of course. That Rayquaza got 170 HP left, which means it's going to take 9 Night Marchers in order to get the KO. Now, that's a lot. The Ryan's only got 5 there. If he gets the KO, then maybe, you know, then they'll essentially be, Ryan will have taken 3 prizes, Luke will have taken 2 going into Luke's turn. But Luke has now got a turn to attach, you know, he doesn't need a Mega Turbo, he can just manually attach this turn and next to the bench Mega Rayquaza, but out comes a Lysandre to get the Mew. Now I loved that revive play from Ryan on his previous turn. Essentially, when he Sky Returned with the Mew, he had to put something active. He didn't want to put the Joltik active, because then the Joltik gets KO'd and Ryan's got no Night Marcher left on the bench for Mew to copy. He doesn't want to put the Empoleon active, because the Empoleon is useful for the diving draw and to draw extra cards, and he doesn't want a 2-prize Mew active. So Pumpkaboo goes active. He's going to need a, and there is a Dimension Valley, so that's not an issue. Now Luke is down to 3 prizes remaining here. This is not a guaranteed win for Night March. Last game, we saw Night March doing what it did. This game, we've seen Night March have a slightly slower start, Rayquaza have a slightly faster start, and now Luke did lose the energy attachment last turn by playing Lysandre, but he did the absolute right thing. Firstly, you know, it cut into Ryan's option. Secondly, it didn't put an extra Night Marcher in Ryan's discard pile. And thirdly, it took an extra prize. So a lot of things going Luke's way here. Now, the Rayquaza, the Mega Rayquaza that's active, like I said, it's got 170 HP left, which essentially means 9 Night Marchers or 8 Night Marchers and a Muscle Band. There's 5 in the discard pile at the moment, so Ryan needs to get something going. Now, he gets rid of, uses an Ultra Ball to get rid of the water, and there's no Execute in Ryan's discard pile, so he's going to need to discard something else. And he goes for the Sycamore there. He's going to need something. Now, presumably, he's going to go for a Night Marcher here, and then he's going to discard said Night Marcher using Empoleon's Diving Draw ability, which will then get him 2 cards and put an extra Night Marcher in the discard pile. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's gone for the Pumpkaboo, and I can only imagine it's going to be Diving Drawed right away. Now, and there we go. Now, that's one of the good things about Empoleon. Firstly, we like Empoleon because he allows us to draw cards. But in a deck like this, you need to be able to discard. Now, if he's putting the muscle band and he's changing his mind. Now, he's put the muscle band on the Joltik, and essentially, it looks like he's giving up on the KO. It looks like he's saying, I'm not going to get another 2 Night Marches in the discard pile, so I'm going to put the muscle band on the Joltik ready for next turn. Because if he thought he was going to get the KO, he'd have put the muscle band on the Pumpkaboo. He needs 2 more Night Marches in the discard pile, plus the muscle band would then do 180 damage. Luke has no energy on his Rayquaza. Now, he can KO a Joltik using Shaman, but he can't KO anything else with anything else, essentially. I mean, the Altaria can attack, but it's garbage. So his only real option of getting a KO with anything other than the Rayquaza is to use a Shaman Sky Return for 30 damage against a Joltik. So, with the Pumpkaboo active, I mean, Ryan's forcing Luke to attack with the Rayquaza is what I'm saying. And Luke doesn't have any... Oh, this is good. I say Luke doesn't have any energy on the Rayquaza, which means that actually not putting the muscle band on the Pumpkaboo has worked out because Ryan's hit a battle compressor. Now, he does need to be careful here that he's not getting rid of all of his attackers, although we see a Joltik and a double colourless in his hand, but this means he can discard 3 Night Marches from his deck, and that will mean he's doing 180 damage, which means he will get the KO on that Rayquaza. And that also means... he's only gone for 1. Now, of course, here, he has got to think the long game here. He's got to think about how many attackers have I got. There's no point getting rid of all of his Night Marches in one go here and not having enough to attack with for the rest of the game. So, interesting decisions here for Ryan. If he doesn't get another 3 Night Marches in the discard pile, he's not getting the KO here. So it looks like he's giving up on the KO. Now, he would be able to finish that off with a Shaman Sky Return next turn. Now, there's 7 in the discard pile. That'll do 140, putting him on 190 total. And another Joltik goes down on the bench here. And I don't know if he even had 2 more Night Marches in his deck. I think I might have seen another Joltik. But if he wasn't going to get the KO anyway, it's not necessarily the best idea to get rid of your last Night Marcher. So he does a bunch of damage, but not enough. And that's pretty much game at this stage for Luke. Because Ryan is... And if I was Ryan, I would seriously consider scooping this matchup right about now. Now, the only thing keeping Ryan in it is the fact that Luke doesn't have much energy down. Because Luke's going to get a KO here and go down to 2 prizes. Ryan is going to have to keep streaming Night Marches, and he'll need a lot more energy in the discard pile when there is the energy on that Rayquaza, and Luke is building up a 3rd. Ryan's only taken 1 prize. That's off the execute right at the beginning of the game. So he needs to KO 3 Rayquazas to get the win here. Luke needs to KO 2 Pokemon. So even if Ryan gets a KO the next 3 turns on Mega Rayquazas, he'll actually lose after KOing 2 of them. And we've already been going for a while in this game, so really at this stage, Ryan needs to be thinking about scooping this game and just going a game 3 and trying to win. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a draw here. Now here is a potential thing here. We got an N. But, I mean, there is a route back. I'm not saying Ryan's lost the game, but essentially it's going to go like this. Ryan is going to get the KO on that Mega Rayquaza with the Joltik this turn and go down to 3 prizes. Luke just needs 1 basic energy to get the KO with Rayquaza next turn, and that Joltik goes down. Or even a DCE and get the KO with Shaman. And then he could even Lysandre and kill a 2nd Joltik the next turn without ever putting any more energy on the field permanently. And that basically means that even if Ryan gets a KO next turn on a new Mega Rayquaza, it's not going to make a huge difference. Now, the Mega Rayquaza goes active. We assume he's got a basic energy. There is a 3rd Mega Rayquaza coming out here. And has he got a supporter or an energy? Oh, he's got a VS Seeker. Presumably for a Juniper for 7, although he could Colrus for 7 as well. I believe we saw him dump one of them right at the beginning of the game. So either would be a good play here. Now, there is still a route to winning, of course. If Ryan KOs that Mega Rayquaza next turn, and he has just gone for the Juniper, discarding the N. So he didn't play the N, he discarded the N to Juniper. There goes the Mega Turbo, which is going to be very, very useful. All onto the benched Rayquaza, which means he's also got an energy to put on the active Rayquaza. And I don't think Ryan should have scooped him in a gut. I think he should have been thinking, oh, he made a mistake, and good guy Ryan letting him take it back. He could have Grinched him there. Oh, that's tasty. Because now he gets a DC on the benched Rayquaza. Now, I should point out at this stage, Ryan actually has 90 championship points from League Challenges. So there is no way Ryan possibly gets any points from this. He is coming just for testing and for fun. So he's happy to kind of give things back like that. Could have affected the game. Don't know if it would have, but it could have affected the game. Because here, Luke needs one basic energy to guarantee the win. If Ryan can KO that Mega Rayquaza. And he's going to need 11 Night Marches or 10 and a Muscle Band to get the KO. And that's asking a lot. Now, he can... Oh, and there's 11 Night Marches. But I was going to say he's not going to have one with which to attack, but that's irrelevant because as soon as that Joltik goes down, he's lost the game anyway. So Luke's going to need one basic energy to take this game. Now, Ryan did have the... Oh, it doesn't actually look like he's got a DCE in hand, though. Now, Ryan did have a route to victory here. And the route to victory was... And he did it brilliantly playing the N, etc., starving Luke of energy. Now, he had the energy last turn. And there goes a diving draw for the DCE, for the KO. 30 HP Joltik, one hit KO into Mega Rayquaza. But if he's got an energy here, it's irrelevant. There is an energy, and there is a game. We are going to game 3 with very little time left. I unfortunately didn't ask these guys to tell me when time was called, so we're going to have to... I can't remember if I waved under the camera when time was called. And as we head into game 3, ladies and gentlemen, we see that we've got Ryan and Luke. They've won one game each, and honestly, it doesn't really look like we're going to see anything other than a draw here. It's hard to see how we get any other result here other than a draw between Ryan and Luke. Because they've won one game each, and we're something like 42 minutes in. We've got about 8 minutes left until time is called. So what we would need, in order to not have a draw here, we would need one of these players to win the game very, very quickly. Now, both players could do this because both players are playing decks which can take fast prizes. Luke can get his Rayquaza going in one turn. Ryan can get his Night Marches going for a lot of damage in one turn. So Ryan could potentially win the game in, 4 turns here because he lost game 2 and will be going first. And Luke could potentially win, you would imagine, in 4 turns. He could win in 3 if Ryan benched 3 EXs. And Luke hit 3 Lysandres, but more likely it would take Luke 4 turns, 2 non-EXs, 2 EXs. The problem is how long the turns take. They draw a lot of cards. Now, we could also see a win quickly if somebody gets benched, that being that they run out of Pokemon. But given what we've seen in the first 2 games, both of these players bench so many Pokemon so quickly, I think the chances of either player being benched here is actually pretty slim. So I wouldn't expect that to happen. So I don't think we're going to see much other than a fairly straightforward draw here, but we'll see. So Ryan starts with a Joltik. That's a decent starter. He can attack with it next turn, or it's just something he can kind of give away. And he Trainer's Mail for an Ultra Ball there, and just showing again the power of that Trainer's Mail. It just speeds decks up so much. You know, like I said before, everybody's playing 30 or 40 trainers. It just allows you to dig for that card you want. Or there's another Trainer's Mail there straight away. And one would think, yeah, he's going for the Battle Compressor there. And again, if he's got a VS Seeker in hand, actually, so it depends what else he's got in his hand. If he's got a Supporter in hand, he'll just dump 3 Night Marches. If he doesn't have a Supporter in hand, then he may well want to dump a supporter there so that he can actually VS Seeker for it. And no, he's getting rid of 3 Lampants, so it does look like he's got a supporter in hand. Again, those Lampants, they exist only to go in the discard pile. Joltik and Pumpkaboo are both Night Marchers with which you can attack, but Lampant, it's a stage 1. You don't play Litwick. It literally exists in your deck to be discarded to add to the amount of damage you're doing. So it's very, very, it's a no-brainer. If you want to get rid of the Empoleon in order to get it going with Archies, then of course you kill that. If you want to get rid of a supporter so that you can VS Seeker it this turn or in the very near future, then you go for that. Otherwise, the only option is to go for your Lampant. So we see an Ultra Ball there, getting rid of the Empoleon, just in case he can Archies it later, and a Megaphone, because the only tools Luke plays is Spirit Link, and it doesn't, unless he leaves a Rayquaza EX on the bench with a Spirit Link attached, and as we've seen, that does not happen very often. It tends to Mega Evolve very quickly. Because of that Delta Revolution ancient trait, like a Groudon, you would have to have, we see a Sycamore there, you would have to have a turn where Groudon was sitting there with a Spirit Link attached. Most of the time, Rayquaza, you just go Rayquaza, Spirit Link, Mega Rayquaza. So you don't even ever find a situation where Megaphone, well, you do occasionally, but you very rarely find a situation where Megaphone is actually useful at all. So Luke here, there is an option for Luke to win here in 2 turns. It would involve Ryan benching no more basics, and we see a Pumpkaboo in his hand, so I don't think that's going to happen. But, let's assume we don't know Ryan's hand, even though we've seen the Pumpkaboo and the Shaman. If Ryan were able to get a Rayquaza going here, and get a KO on the Joltik, and then get a KO on the second Joltik next turn, but that would involve Ryan drawing dead, and I did have a pleasure to play against Ryan, like I said, in a later round in this particular tournament, and Ryan's deck is crazy consistent. It's super consistent. It just doesn't draw dead. Oh, we Juniper there getting rid of 2 double colourless energies. However, as I've said, and Luke knows this, he's a good player, he knows he's going for a draw here. So all he needs to do is get enough basics out that Ryan isn't going to bench him. So although getting rid of 2 DCs would hurt you late game when you ran out of them, especially with Lysandre's trump card not being out at the moment, it really makes no real difference here. And he switches into an Execute just to essentially force Ryan into a 7 prize game, so that killing this Execute does nothing. Now, it should be pointed out, both these players are exceptional players here. Ryan is in the hunt for top 22, although he is being screwed over by all the scooping at international nationals. See my podcast number 149 and 150 on this very YouTube channel for more information about that. But at the tournament, he was still just about clinging on. And we see a couple Night Marches and a computer search prize. That's not ideal. Luke has his invite well and truly wrapped up. Unfortunately, not yet in the hunt for top 22, but he's got his day 1 invite well and truly settled. And his brother Corey is actually, Ryan takes a prize, goes 1 up there. His brother Corey is in a position to get top 22 unless he gets passed by a few people, which is very unlikely. Possible, but unlikely. So, there is a possibility here that Ryan gets a day 2 invite and paid, and that Luke gets a day 1 invite, but ends up going as Corey's guardian, his brother's guardian, so they both actually get essentially a paid trip to Worlds. So that is pretty good in their respect. So Luke goes for the Winona, and he needs quite a lot here. He needs a Mega Rayquaza. He could do with the Swablu Altaria combination, using Delta Revolution to evolve them straight away, the ancient trait that the Altaria has. And he could do with a Shaman to draw some more cards, although he's also going to need a Skyfield at some point. So it looks like he's gone for the Mega, the Swablu, and the Shaman. And there is time. That's what my hand means. And we are heading to a draw here. So we're not going to carry on talking about the rest of this game, because the only way anybody wins here is if Luke KOs a Joltik this turn, and then on his next turn, which would be his last turn, KOs the other Joltik to get the win. But we know that's not going to happen, because we know Ryan's got 2 basics in his hand. So unfortunately, we are going to an inevitable draw here. But I think this is one of the few situations of a deserved draw. Nobody nicked a game here. Nobody won a game they didn't deserve. We got 2 good players with good decks, both of whom won 1 game in the way they should, lost 1 game in the way they shouldn't. And although it's kind of annoying to try and get into cut, a draw feels fair here. So make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that you like this video, you subscribe if you haven't, and get a friend to subscribe if you have. I will be back with round 2 from this particular tournament very shortly, but make sure you check out my new gaming channel, Wassy Plays. It's going to be on the featured tab on my YouTube channel, so you can find it by looking to the right-hand side of the screen. Or just searching on YouTube, or checking my Twitter. I'm going to be posting it around everywhere. Check that out, guys, and look out for round 2, which will be coming pretty shortly.